about 75% of pain-related emergency room visits are due to headache.
Headache.
That's a
You know
lot.
what? Yeah, that's a 75%. But you know what? It's that's something that people have totally taken and put into a lot of different framework. A headache being someone being irritated, a headache being them not just eating properly, or a headache being some type of stressful situation.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not always related to, oh, I got some type of serious illness going on.
Right,
Got you, got you,
right,
got you.
right, right, right. But I get that there's a direct association with it, though, right? I mean, because stress does cause headaches.
Well, the funny thing is, man, you know, with headaches are it's simple but kind of difficult because you know
At the
when you
same
think
time.
about it, when it comes to at the same time, for us and the way that we would look at a headache, it's kind of simple. But when you look at it, man, there are, you know, we know about there's three main types of headaches. So I want us to kind of discuss this and really kind of lay out the differences between these three. But I was also reading some information, I think, from the Cleveland Clinic, um, and there was up to like 10 different types of headaches.
10.
Man,
10 different types of headaches.
Dang.
Now, we're not going to talk about all 10
Right.
of them.
Right. Someone got to be crazy, right? Got to be crazy stuff.
Some of them are
Yeah.
crazy. External pressure headache,
External pressure. You
for
got your helmet on
example.
too tight?
Exactly, and that's where it comes from.
where'd you get that from?
Wearing a headband, wearing a hat too tight, a helmet too tight. That external pressure causes you to have a headache, and that's a type of headache.
I was thinking more like bungee cord
Man.
jumping or skydiving for an external headache.
Yeah, so basically, you know what we know of and what most people know of when it comes to headaches. You have migraines, of course. You have tension headaches, and also I think probably one of the worst is cluster
Mm-hmm.
headaches.
Oh
And
yeah.
then you also have headaches that are caused by the overuse of some medications and things of that nature. So fellas, I want you to talk about those things right now when it comes to headaches. Like, how do we decipher the difference? You know, get into why we have headaches or why people suffer from headaches, and then let's talk about maybe some things that we can do from a natural standpoint rather than medication. Because also, man, headache is about a $2 billion industry right
Man,
now
man,
when it
man,
comes to the
man,
different
Yes,
types of
sir.
meds and things like out there
man.
for it.
Like, you know, when we talking about headaches, like, you know, we in practice all day, right? So we see headaches all day long. And when you talk to people, one of the things I find is, and they say they got headaches, they wake them up in the morning. I mean, wake them up in the middle of the night, or they get them throughout the day. Is that when you talk to people for just a few minutes, a lot of times you can identify the source of their headaches, especially based on some of the stuff you was just saying, Doc. Is that typically it's pretty simple to figure out where their headaches are coming from because it's the sources, right? The types of headaches. It might be 10 different types of headaches, but the sources of a lot of headaches seem to be, you know, just from a few things. One of the things we started out talking about was sleep, right? How much they sleeping,
Yeah.
the stress that the ways that they putting stress on the system. And so that's one of the things that I find is really common is you got somebody who work third shift, right? They get home at 7 a.m. and they back up at 10:30, and they do that every day. Well, it's pretty easy to figure out where your headaches are coming from if you get 3.5 hours of sleep every day, 5, 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And you can almost break it down into, I guess, the three classifications of life: be it work, vocational, be it social, right? And then being the other one, which is the one that we love the most, you're talking about if you have any one of those where you're indulging in anything, it can go over those three classifications that you talked about, which is your nutrition. It like Dr. Everett was saying earlier, sleep deprivation being probably one of the top things that's going on in our culture today.
Sleep deprivation is definitely one of those things that leads people to having headaches. Yeah, that was one of the major causes.
If I'm guessing, and if I'm really pointing to one that I think is really important, I would say side effects from the medications that people take would be one that I would definitely look into.
That's another big one.
Because we know, that the United States takes more medications than any country on the planet, right? So it goes without saying that we probably have more headaches. I'm just guessing, but we probably have more headaches than anybody on the planet. And those two probably go together.
You know what's funny, what you mentioned in that, Dr. Everett, if you consider and think about high blood pressure, for example, high blood pressure meds, hypertensive medications is one of those drugs that can lead to those type of headaches that we're talking about. And it's kind of, I really feel bad for some people when they're not given the proper education when it comes to their health. Specifically talking about headaches is what we're talking about right now, because, hypertension, a headache is also a sign of hypertension, right? If someone has hypertension, one of the symptoms that they could experience before they even know it is a headache. But at the same time, if they get on medication and they're taking the medication improperly, or sometimes the way that it's been prescribed for them, headache is also a symptom.
Absolutely. And when we're on the topic of drugs, or over-the-counter drugs, some lifestyles socially, you talk about the legal drugs, different things like the alcohol or different things that get people to where they need to be at, or how they relax sometimes. Not necessarily the use of, but the overindulgence of.
Right.
Sometimes we work so hard, or we go so hard. When we do get a chance to relax, the things that we do, we're overindulge in, and those things cause side effects. And those side effects, oftentimes, are the light bulb that goes off. Like, hey, we going a little overboard, or is a headache.
And
right. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, so talk to me, tell me a little bit more about this, fellas. As chiropractors, we talk about stress, right? And we talk about how stress to a certain system, like what Dr. Everett mentioned earlier, stress to a certain system in the body can lead to a number of different issues. Now, what I would like for you guys to kind of talk about is what are those types of stress that we deal with that usually leads to the headaches that we have, because, of course, as chiropractors, we're relating everything to how it's affecting someone's nervous system, right? And how well their body's able to perform when they're under a large amount of stress. But based on the information that you guys just shared, the lack of sleep, nutrition, environment, social, all those different aspects of it are all fall in some type of category of stress.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So I would like for you guys to kind of talk about that a little bit, those different types of stress.
Well, I think, when we break it down, we think of stress as this broad topic, right? Like it's a whole lot of different things, your work and just your life period, right? It's just all these different things. But when you break it down, it's really only 3 types of stress. And if you're a chiropractor or you're a chiropractic patient, then you know what those 3 types of stress are: physical, chemical, and emotional, right? And those physical, chemical, and emotional stresses, like, wearing a headband too tight would be a physical external, right? Would be a physical stress causing headaches. And those chemical things like Dr. Vaught was talking about could be anything from alcohol to the blood pressure medication you're taking, or the stuff you're taking for your digestive system, or anything like that, right? And then the emotional stresses,
right,
are the stresses of life, right? The things that we go through and the things that affect us emotionally, because we know emotionally our body chemistry can be affected when our emotions are affected. And those can cause headaches as well.
Wow.
And I think that's powerful what Dr. Everett just said. I mean, because you look at certain regions in the world, even certain regions in the country where there's less stress, where there's maybe more sunshine, and you look at the psychosocial aspect of it. You literally can be in an environment that's intoxicating to your body, as far as the things that are going on, the government affairs, vocationally the work that you're doing, and then we can go back to the nutritional aspect of the things that our body need. I was sitting here, we talking about how terrible a headache is, right?
Right.
We're talking about how terrible a headache is, but actually a headache can have its benefit. How so? It's a blinking light. It's showing you that something is going on before something bigger happens.
Yeah.
A headache actually always happens, pretty much always happens before a huge health crisis is evident or it begins to spring about. So it's actually a good, natural, healthy response to a body that's failing naturally and not getting what it needs.
Man, it's interesting that you say that, man, Dr. Vaught. What you mentioned about that blinking light, like a headache could be a sign of something a little bit deeper. You know, I remember, man, when I was young growing up. Did you guys ever remember the little BC packets?
Oh yeah.
They come in a little blue and white packet called had BC on it. And and I remember, man, my mother, you know, my mother, man, all the time she would get a headache and she would go to the store. I need to go get a BC. And, you know, it was crushed up. I don't know what it was. I really don't know what it was, but it came in the form of powder, you know. So I don't know if it was crushed up aspirin, whatever, whatever BC was. But that's what my mother utilized. That was her go-to when she had headaches. And it's crazy because years and years and years went on where she was having these headaches. And I wonder, based on what you said, Dr. Vaught, if those headaches were a sign or a symptom of now maybe like the high blood pressure that she suffers with. If that was her body giving her signs back then when she was much younger, giving her signs, letting her, hey, there's something else going on, that blinking light. But I think with headaches, you know, it's something that's so common. As a matter of fact, I think it's about 15% of women, maybe 1 in 5 or 6 women get headaches on a daily. And I think for men, that number is a lot more broad. But for women, you know, we see it all the time in practice. It's a lot more common in women, and they suffer from headaches a lot more. And maybe it's a blinking light that we as physicians, as chiropractors, and the medical profession out here need to really figure out what's better options for these people.
Yeah.
Or how do we get down to the bottom of a lot of this?
And I think, you know, like when you say getting down to the bottom of it, I think one of the things to point out and to be very specific about is that a headache is a symptom, right? A headache is a symptom that something is going on in your body. Very, very rarely, unless you run your helmet too tight, is the actual headache the problem, right? It's usually an indicator, like we saying, a blinking light. So when you have a headache, that means it's your body saying to you, hey, something's going on that you need to check out. So it's one of those things that lets us know that the body is just not functioning at its best. And I think it makes most sense to look at a headache from that standpoint, so that when you get a headache, the automatic reaction isn't to just get BC powder, right? Or to take Excedrin, or to take Tylenol when you get a headache, to be thinking a little bit deeper and asking yourself the question that oftentimes we just don't get asked in the medical profession is, why is this happening? And I think that's the question that's lacking, you know, in our thought process about our health, but also in the medical profession when we go to seek help. is why am I having this headache? Because I'm having this headache for a reason. The headache is not the actual problem.
You know, Dr. Everett, I was thinking about it, and Dr. Tipler, if you kind of look at the headache, it's kind of two ways, because there's things that you can do to combat the headache. There's things that you can do to kind of get rid of it. But I think culturally and in our society, we've always been told, you know, just push through the headache, push past the headache and keep it going. It's just something that is minute. But there's oftentimes like a Pandora's box that can be open for each individual, being that we're, you know, all different, that turns into a different health condition. And looking at the health conditions, I think we look at a headache as something minute. We call it, even in its name, headache, right? It's an ache. You know, you just get past your ache. Some of the conditions that can come through this small headache continuously, you're talking about strokes,
Right.
You're talking about severe migraines. You're talking about heart attacks,
Aneurysms. And
aneurysms.
Yeah, we talked about the hypertension.
Now,
right.
hypertension. You know, now people are listening, like right now, right? Like I hear stroke, I hear hypertension, right? But once your body the neurology kind of programs it, you know, we kind of past the headache phase, right?
Right.
Now we got a systemic disease or disorder, and I think that's one of the reasons why we minimize the ache. We minimize it when it's just the key to a huge Pandora's box of
I'll tell you one, man, that is often overlooked too is allergy. Is a headache can be an allergic reaction, right? It can be a reaction to something you drinking or something like a hangover is like an allergic reaction, right? So it can be a reaction to something that you drinking or eating, something you consuming, right? So it could be a food that you're eating that's giving you these chronic headaches, which you can find out a lot of times is, man, I really shouldn't be eating this particular herb, or I really shouldn't be eating this amount of sugar, right? Or I shouldn't be eating, you know, this amount of salt. And that's what's causing my headache. So sometimes it can be an allergic reaction to something that you're consuming, something that you may not even realize, right? Because one of the things that certain dyes in the things that we drink, right? Red number this or blue number that, people can be allergic to, and it can cause those headaches. So again, the headache is like a symptom letting you know something's going on. And one of those areas to look in is how your body is reacting to some of the stuff that you're consuming.
Yeah. And that's important that you mention that, because usually what triggers migraines is some sort of smell, some food, light, you know, a loud noise or something like that. So that's a very good point, man, is that, you know, I think also being aware of just maybe the foods that we eat, different environments, things around us that could be triggering a lot of the problems and issues that someone may be having with a headache.
And Dr. Everett, you open another Pandora's box when you talk about allergic reactions. What a lot of people don't know, we oftentimes fight through allergies. We fight through these things that our body are allergic to. And these things turn into autoimmune disorders.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now you're talking about lifetime stuff that reprograms your entire body.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's getting a lot deeper. And because you've been, like you said, like we've been saying, is that you get this signal for years and years and years and years and years, and then you have this autoimmune disease when your body's been screaming at you. Right? For 20 years, your body's been screaming at you that what you're doing is hurting us. What you're doing is affecting the body in a negative way. I need you to stop. But like you said, we take the Excedrin for the headache. We take, the pain pill for the headache. We lay down. We call off work. We do all these things for 20 years, not knowing that what we're consuming is developing into an autoimmune condition. Which is really when your body just says, all right, we had enough.
and it
Yeah.
shuts down. And I think the other end of that as well, and I think it's important for us to understand is that when we take medication at such a high level, it's also going to damage the
Yeah.
body. So I remember early on in practice, there was a young lady, Dr. Everett, that you were seeing. That one day she came in when she, a few years after you had saw her the first time, she was on
Mm-hmm.
dialysis. And before, when she was, her story, when she was 13, 14 years old, when she was
Yeah.
very young, she had headaches. Share that story with us,
Yeah,
Doc.
from a young age, she had headaches, a very young age. So what do we do for headaches? We medicate them, right? So she had
Mm-hmm.
taken so many pain pills over the years that at a very young age, what was she, Doc, in her 20s? She was in her mid.
She
She
was
was
in
in
her
her.
20s when she
She was
came.
in
Yeah, when
when
she
she
came
came
back
back
in her
in
early
her early
20s.
20s on dialysis because her system had gone into failure. Right, her kidneys had been so overrun from the toxins from the medication she was taking for headaches that now at this point in her early 20s she's on dialysis. So her kidneys had failed at that point. So she's run her kidneys down because we know the kidneys are the filtration system for the body. So when you bring stuff in, it has
Right.
to filter through those kidneys. So she had destroyed her kidneys just because she was having headaches. I mean, it's sad to see because has something been done when she was a lot younger, had it been addressed in a different way when she was younger, then that situation could have been totally avoided.
Yeah. So that's the pitfall I think that you know our our people
Yeah.
fall into because something as simple as a headache, as simple as a
Mm-hmm.
headache, but as complicated as it can be, I think we sometimes make it more complicated than what it
Mm-hmm.
is, because we all know that medication may not be the solution. It could be something as simple as looking at what's in your
Mm-hmm.
diet, something as drinking more water, something as easy as regulating your sleep, getting a little more sleep. Starting with the simple things, those things that's not going to harm the body, but the things that's going to bring better health to the body versus always turning to the medicine cabinet, the BC, the ibuprofen, and some of this, outrageous medication that they have for people that have headaches or
Yeah.
migraines.
People medicate in other ways too.
Mhm.
I think one of the most common ways that people medicate those headaches outside of medication, which would be number one, would be caffeine. Right? So yeah,
Yeah,
so people would
exactly.
have a coffee, which is nothing wrong with coffee when you're doing it the right way, nothing at all. I think it tastes terrible. I don't understand it, but it's nothing wrong with coffee when you consuming it the right way. But when you're using it as a medication, which a lot of people do, right? A lot of people use caffeine as a
Yeah,
medication because they get those headaches when they wake up in the morning. They got that headache. That's why they got to drink their morning coffee to get that edge off, to deaden that, because it vasodilates and it makes you feel better and all that stuff. But it's covering up, you're blocking that symptom, and that's really all you're doing, and never really addressing that actual problem.
wow.
I think it's some definite techniques, and you know what, Dr. Everett, I'm gonna go here. I think medication is amazing for
Simple.
emergency situations if someone is going to die and is gonna save their life. But I oftentimes refer to medication as like fix a flat. Like you got this tire that's going out, and you need to make it home, and you put some fix a flat in, but you never change the tire. So you wake up in the morning every day and got to put fix a flat in, but at the same time, the tire is steadily degenerating because you're
Right.
not fixing the problem. So the fix a flat is not going to work. It's going to help you get home, right? But in order to restore this thing called good health and balance and equilibrium is those lifestyle changes, and I think that goes directly into the headaches. There's like Dr. Tipler, like you just said earlier, and not because I don't want to minimize it because I heard what you said. Proper hydration, adding specific things to your diet that your body needs, because if it is a blinking light,
Mm-hmm.
something's missing.
Right.
Yeah.
Exercise. The American Heart Association states that 89% of cardiovascular disease can be decreased by just exercising 20 minutes. I'm talking about a brisk walk, 20 minutes, 5 days a week can decrease that. And if a lot of headaches comes from some type of arterial disease or some type of arterial stress, that right there alone is going to do it. And then environment. Dr. Everett, you gave earlier, you talked about the three stresses. I'll say it in a different way: thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Like you talked about those three stresses. Looking at you talking about cardiovascular for the physical, you're talking about nutritional, which is the toxins, and then environment. Making sure that you're taking time to get rest. Fellas, we got to sleep tonight. Taking time to get rest. You got to, Dr. Everett, you got to sleep longer than 30 minutes a day. You just got to do it. Like, an hour nap is not a full night's sleep. And you know what? I'm just talking.
I don't like the taste of coffee, so I just mainline it. I mainline coffee. I don't drink it because it don't taste good.
You know, I mean, but this is the question that I have for both of you guys, because this is the thing, and because I was sitting here thinking about it. How do we teach these things at an early age, or younger, or do it or combat it prior to when the headaches become, like you said, Dr. Everett, an everyday thing, and then begin to change the cells?
Well, I think probably when we're thinking about the younger generation, man, it's really going to have to come through the education of the parents, especially for the kids. We do physicals for the youth and that are in a lot of these sports programs. And you really have to be careful with a lot of these kids, because the example that Dr. Ever gave, a tight helmet for a kid playing football, and they develop headaches. A cheerleader, they may wear a bow around their head or a headband or something like that. But we have to we have to be educated as parents to really be able to identify first off what could be causing this headache, and rather than resulting to medication, because my fear is that we get children started taking medication too young, too early. And that becomes their reality. When something happens, they're looking for some type of pill. So if we have to work on breaking that cycle as well. So I think the education, and if you're listening to this podcast, really understanding that first we have to be solution based. We have to be solution focused, looking at why is it that someone is having a headache, and not just looking at I can go grab a pill or something like this to cover it up and mask it. So I think that education is probably the first thing, Dr. Vaught.
Yeah, I think so. I think it really, just to piggyback off that, because I think that's the first, second, third, and fourth thing is the education, is the understanding, right? So one of the things we talked about was headaches being purely a symptom, right? It's not your problem. It's a symptom of a condition going on in your body. And Dr. Vaught, I wanted to get specific on one of the things that you said about the arterial, and just people understanding how that mechanism works, because your heart is the pump for your body. It moves blood around your body. So if you have heart issues, remember that blood has to go up to get to your brain. So if you're having heart issues where your heart isn't pumping as effectively as it needs to, or the arteries going from here to there, or clogged or blocked, then blood isn't getting to the brain at the level that it needs to get to for one of those reasons. And that can cause those headaches. It can cause those cluster type headaches. It can cause those tension type headaches on the head when you're not getting enough blood supply to the brain. Another reason for that is, like we talked about, water. And that's simple. It's basically your brain being dehydrated. You're not getting enough blood. You're not getting enough water to the brain, which is mostly water. You're not getting enough there. And so the brain shrinks and gets tight. When it shrinks and gets tight, you get a headache. When it's almost like it's dry. It's like the sponge is dried out. And when that sponge is dried out, that's painful. And your body is saying, hey, the sponge is dried out and you need to do something about it.
Right.
And it, like you said, it may be as simple as getting hydrated, but a lot of times it is related to that heart and how well that pump can work to get the blood to the brain to remove all the toxins that build up in the brain. So when those toxins get built up in the brain over time, those headaches, people's headaches can get worse and worse and worse over time because they're not flushing and they're not turning over that fluid in the brain that needs to be turned over for any one of those reasons, chronic dehydration or issues with the heart or issues with the arteries. And people really understanding that specifically, that especially if you're a little bit older and you're getting headaches, then those are a couple of areas that you really need to be considering, that you really need to be thinking about and why you're getting those headaches.
Right. Wow, man. I never realized that, a headache could be, like I said, something that's so simple, but yet so complicated because there's so many different things that could come into play. It's, so many different factors that could be the cause. But yet maybe the I don't want to say treatment, but the solution a lot of times is already within the body, right?
Yes. I mean,
the solution is usually always in the body. 9
times out of 10, man. The problem is we think it's 1 time out of 10, right? And the solution is external. The thing is that our bodies are so complicated, and they still are. Our body is still far beyond our scientific understanding. It's still way beyond our understanding. But I think there's a simple principle, like we use in chiropractic a lot, is the body was designed a certain way. It was designed a certain way to work, right? And if it's not working, it's our job and our task to figure out why it's not working. It's not our job and our task to intervene first, right? It's to support and facilitate the system so that it is working as strong as it possibly can first. And if it's not working as strong as it possibly can, for some reason that we can't get around, then you intervene, right? And I think the problem is that we got that backwards, is that the first thing we're doing is intervening, because when you take an Excedrin or when you take BC powder, you're intervening in the process and not really looking at what's going on with the system and how that system needs to be improved in order to get rid of your symptom.
Wow. I want to start I wanted to ask you guys one more question, because I'm sure there's one other problem. Like I think you guys really talked about it well when it comes to, migraine headaches and what causes those. And I think we really talked about one of the reasons for the external pressure headache. There's a name for it, but basically a tension headache due to something we're doing to ourselves. But man, when you think about since the pandemic, a lot of people are working from home now. I'm gonna say this and then I'm done. But think about the posture that people have taken on right now since the pandemic. Now we are even more sedentary in this country than we were before. It was already an issue, but now it's become even worse because everyone, is sitting. Everyone is working from home. Everyone's sitting at a desk in front of a computer, or really the main problem, everybody's on a phone.
Yep.
What do you think that is doing for us when it comes to headache?
Man, that's right up our alley.
Man,
I'm sorry, Dr. Gart.
They've already coined it no. You're right. I mean, you're right there. They've already coined it I was just going to say they already coined it a complete medical condition with cervical cranial syndrome or cervical neck syndrome now that hospitals are servicing and chiropractors are fixing. I mean, it actually it's there because of that. That what you was just saying.
That posture. That leaning forward, puts pressure on the nervous system, right? Puts pressure on the nerves up here, the nerves that go to the head. When you tilt that head forward, when you slump your shoulders forward sitting in front of your computer, when you change that posture, if I had some room to turn to the side, I would. But when you change that posture, you put a lot of pressure on these nerves that go up to the head. And when you put pressure on these nerves that go up to the head, guess what you get? A headache, which is still not your problem. The problem is the pressure on the nerves. Right. So correcting the pressure on the nerves, I think it's appropriate that we drop a little commercial for chiropractic right now when we're talking about that pressure on the nervous system. Because when you get that pressure on the nervous system, improving your posture is really, really important. But also getting that neck adjusted, right? Getting that pressure off of that nervous system, which is just a facilitation of the natural processes of the body, allowing the nerves to flow freely so that we don't get those headaches. So your body's not saying, we got pressure on our nerves. And, allowing, your very good friendly neighborhood chiropractor to remove that stress from your nervous system so you don't have those headaches and you don't have to take BC powder.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful, fellas. I thank you guys for that information as it relates to headaches. So hopefully for our listeners, one of the things that you were able to get from this is understanding the different types of headaches and understanding that headache is not really the disease or the problem that you have. It's a symptom, and it's something that needs to be addressed rather than, like Dr. Everett said, we reach for the BC, the ibuprofen, or something of that nature. But there are some simple things that we can start doing for ourselves as it relates to our health. So I'm gonna let you guys kind of close it out with just giving one thing, Dr. Everett, that you would have people do to change if someone's suffering with headaches. One thing that they can start doing that will probably help.
When your Uncle Kenny call and he asks for money, hang up the phone. I'm just kidding. Nah. I would say, one of the things that I think would be the most important when it comes to those headaches is drinking water. I think really, really making sure that your body stays hydrated. It's the top cause of headaches. And it's a simple fix. You can knock a bunch of things off the list if you get yourself hydrated. If you still have headaches after that, then you need to be looking at other areas.
Absolutely. Dr. Vaught?
And I would say one of the things would be rest. The two things that's sticking in my head now is keep the sponge soapy and soggy wet, and don't use fix-a.
Right.
That's what if you got that right there, as far as that, don't just cover the problem up with the chemical solution when your body is naturally screaming that something's going on. Make sure you're getting, number one, a proper rest, and like Dr. Everett said, make sure you're properly hydrated, which is half your body weight in ounces of water. Not the 8 bottles, the 8 ounces of 8 bottles, eight bottles of 8 ounces of water, but proper hydration, half your body weight in ounces of water, and proper rest. And I'm not talking about rest that's induced by something chemical. If that's the only way, it is something that you have to do. But getting proper rest, that disconnect from work, from problems, and lying down and going to sleep and making sure that you're giving yourself that is going to be very surface, but very, intentional as far as really dealing and combating with things like headaches.
Yeah. And I think the last piece that I would say is mind the body and the body will mind you. Basically, I guess what that means is pay attention to what your body is saying. Pay attention to what the body is asking for. Give it what it needs, and the body will take care of you.
I think it's that simple, fellas.
And that's it. It's that simple.